have hidden lines, and that the X and Z axes are now on a 30. Thus the reason you guys scream 30 every time I say ISO. Pause for time to scream 30. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to create the baselines, and I'm just going to create them off to the side here. I know that I need to leave space for my front view and my right side view along with the top. So I'm going to go in the bottom center of my page as much as I possibly can. At that point, I need to look at my front and top views to figure out what's going to be on the frontmost plane of my front view. What I mean when I say frontmost plane is that if I were to take a piece of glass, and I've talked about this before, if I were to take a piece of glass and put it up against the front view, there would only be certain things that are actually touching. And in my top view, that piece of glass would still be there, only it would look like a line, and it would still only be touching those two pieces, in this case, that are actually on the front plane. The way that I know that is by bringing in a line across the frontmost part of my top view. By looking at that, only two pieces are touching the front view of what's going to be on the front plane, which just happens to be these two squares in my front view. So right off the bat, I know that this is going to be a square that remains, that's going to be on the frontmost plane. I'm going to skip 2 blocks, and I'm going to create the other square that is going to be visible from the very front plane as well. Now, the only reason I drew that with this space is because, again, in the front view, these 2 blocks are not on the frontmost plane. They're not touching the glass. They're going to be pushed back on the Z, however much space. I'm not totally sure yet because from the front view, we don't have that Z axis. A lot of people from the front view, now that we've got pretty much all the information that we can get at this point from the front view, a lot of people switch to the top, which is what I'm going to do. So again, I need to create this shape in my top view. So I'm just going to trace from my baselines back 3 on the Z, over 4 on the X, down 3 on the Z, and I'll continue the whole way around. So starting at the baselines, I'm going to go back 3 on the Z axis. I'm going to go over 4 on the X. And again, I'm making these lines very dark so that you can see them. I'm going to go down 3 on the Z. I'm going to go over 1 on the X, which has already been created. I'm going to go back 1 on the Z, over 2 on the X, because we're now in this space right here in our top view. And I'm going to go back down 1 on the Z. So I've created this whole shape on that 30-degree angle because, again, it follows the XZ axes. Now, you may be noticing that this space doesn't look like it's finished. It's not. So from the top view, we can see that everything that's underneath here is parallel. They are straight cuts. So what I can do is that Y-axis I can bring down, even though we don't have it in the top view, and I can create this overall shape because I know that it's parallel. The reason I didn't draw in here is because, again, we do not draw hidden lines in an isometric. So we need to make sure that we are not drawing anything inside of there. Technically, there is material back there. It's hollowed out. It's a 90-degree cut. But from our point of view, we can't see that. At this point, we've pretty much taken care of everything in the top view that we can get at this point. So let's go ahead and go to the right side view. From the right side view, I'm going to literally trace this around as well, going on the Y and Z axes. So if I go back from my baselines 4 on the Z axis, I've created this line. I'm only going to go up 3 blocks on this particular side because there's a visible line here which tells me that this shape isn't necessarily where it's supposed to be. I'm going to go up 3 on the Y axis, over 1 on the Z, down 2 on the Y axis, and if you notice, the rest of the L has already been created for me by the top view. At that point, the right side view has, again, pretty much given us all the information that we can possibly get. So let's go back to the front view because that's where we started. At the front view, we had to create this box, which we did. We had to create this box, which we did. We have to create this rectangle, which we did. And then we have to create this odd shape up here. Now, I also know by looking at my right side view that that information is back on the Z. So it's parallel with this line, okay? Which again, I've already created part of that in my right side view. So let's go ahead and start at this point and looking from the front view, trace this whole shape. From this point, we're going to go up 2, and now we have an irregular line. Whenever we're faced with an irregular line in an isometric, what we need to do is create a box around it as much as we possibly can. Most times that will be feasible, at least in the intro level. In second level, you might be faced with a more difficult drawing that doesn't necessarily give you a straight X, Y that you can add in order to find the point. But in this case, we can go up 1 block and over 1 on the X to find this point, which has now created kind of a connecting line as to where this edge will actually be. As you can see, it doesn't fall on the X, Y, or Z axes, which tells us right off the bat that it is an irregular line. From there, we need to go down 2 blocks on the Y axis. We will go over 2 blocks on the X axis. Again, we're working in the front view, so we're dealing with the X, Y axes. We're going to go up 2 blocks from the Y axis. Now we're faced with another irregular line. Make a box out of it. We're going to go over 1 on the X and down 1 on the Y, and that will happen to give us our connecting point. Now, the issue that we have with this is that from our point of view with the isometric, being on a 30, is that that line looks like it's fitting onto a Z axis. The problem is we're in the front view, and we know that on the front view we only have the X and Y axes. So right off the bat, we know that that line can't possibly be a regular line because it's falling on the Z axis, tells us right off the bat again, X, Y axes only in the front view. So that Z axis in the front view can't possibly be a regular line. From that point, we go straight down on the Y axis. Okay? At this point, the front view again has given us everything that we could possibly need, and our pattern was to go front, top, right side, so let's go back to the top. If we look at all of these lines in the top, we've pretty much covered all of this information. Now we need to do this. And it looks like everything goes back on the Z axis 1 block for that thickness. So I create the Z axis here. I create the Z axis here. I technically would create a Z axis here, but again, we can't see that. I create the Z axis here. I create the Z axis here, and I technically need to create the Z axis here, but again, can't see it from our point of view in this isometric. Now it's as simple as connecting the lines. So we need to make this look like a 3D shape. Well, in our right side view, it tells us that the y-axis is parallel. So this y-axis is going to be parallel to this y-axis. We can also see that this line in our top view is parallel to this line, so we need to create that. Again, we would have that information there, but this is an isometric and we don't do hidden lines. The last line that we need to include is from this point to this point, making that parallel box that we couldn't technically write from our right side view because it wasn't a regular line. So again, I hope that this clarifies a little bit more of this information. We will be practicing these all year long. We're going to continue to use this information. You're going to need to create orthos and isos of every project that we create for the rest of the year. So it's very important that you understand these. I will be creating more videos as to how to do those rounded edges and any more irregular lines. If you look at number 5, that has irregular lines and a circle. So I will create more videos about how to create those pieces, but I wanted to make sure that you guys understood how to do the 2 review questions that you were asked to do before. I hope this clarifies it, and if you need any more help, what you can do is see me and I can give you some more practice for both ortho and iso.